So, welcome back. We have had a fair study of conceptual dependency theory, and we have seen how we can represent English language sentences into some canonical representation, where different sentences saying the same thing would be mapped onto the same internal representation. Let us see how this process is done, and this is called as semantic parsing. Okay, so the Yale group used the word conceptual analysis. So, let us look at this sentence that I want to go to the park with the girl. So, as we have discussed, want is the first thing that you encounter, the first action or first verb that you encounter, and you will retrieve it from your dictionary, and what you would get is what does want mean essentially, what does the word want mean. So, one meaning of the verb could be that if some event were to happen conditionally in the future, then x would be pleased and this x is human. So, we are stating here for some reason that humans only want things, but something must happen which will make you happy. So, a transitive verb would be that if someone were to A-trans some object y, y is some physical object, from that someone to me, then I would be happy. I want the book, for example. There is a third sense of the word, which says that we are talking about two humans, x. So, x wants y to p trans y from wherever here. So, I want you in my office at 5 p.m. If I say, then this is the sense of the word want. So, you can see that words will languages are rich and often ambiguous. So, you have to do a certain amount of search, a certain amount of heuristics to try and figure out which sense that you have retrieved is the one that matches the current sentence. So, we have figured out that want, there are three senses here, and we want the first sense which does not specify anything, which is a state verb is chosen. The parser is now on the lookout for a complete conceptualization to fill it in, because that sense simply said that I want something to happen on the top and then I would be happy, and we will read the rest of the sentence and try to figure out what is happening. What is it that you want? So, the next two words you reach is I want to go. It has also different senses. One is that x must p trans x to some place, which is probably the sense that we are looking for. But it could also mean that one p transes something which is a physical object to some place essentially. So, this is the sense that you would say when you say you are doing takeaway or something like that, or do you want to this thing. Do you want to eat here or do you want it to go or something like that. So, it fulfills the expectation of a conceptualization. We needed something and conceptualization here, and we can fill it with this p trans action. So, I p trans I to some place, that some place is what, as we will see, to go to the park. So, that place would get filled up by the park, and the basic conceptualization would be that conditionally in the future, if I were to p trans myself to the park, then I would be happy. So, one part of the sentence we have understood, that I want to go to the park. Now comes the part where with the girl. Now, this with is a multiple sense word in English language. We will see some of these examples here and see what are the different senses of the word with PP. So, picture producer noun phrase, nominal, whatever you want to call it, has many conceptual possibilities. So, the first is that the PP is an object of the instrumental case. So, if you look at the sentence number 4 here, which is what I have written here, I hit the boy with the bat. So, with the bat says that it is an object in the instrumental case. That is one sense of the word with PP. Then the PP is an additional actor of the conceptualization, which is there in the sentence, I went with the girl to the park, which is the sense that we are also looking for. A third sense of with is PP is an attribute of PP immediately preceding it. So, in these three sentences 1, 2 and 5, you can see that I went with the book. So, the book is an attribute of mine, that I was carrying the book and I went to the park. In sentence 2, it says I went to the park with the playground. So, the park, which is the PP immediately preceding with the playground. So, the park had the playground. In sentence number 5, it says I hit the boy with the girl. So, clearly what we mean is, or at least that is what we normally mean, is that the boy was with the girl essentially. So, with the girl is an attribute of the boy. And lastly, PP is an attribute of the actor of the conceptualization. So, the first one says I went with a book. So, I am the actor and the book is with me in some sense. The last sentence says I hit the boy with vengeance, which is different from hitting the boy with a girl. But now you can see vengeance is an attribute of the actor. When I say vengeance, it is my attribute. And as we observed on the way, that the sense 2 is what we are looking for in this particular sentence. So, if you want to now represent this sentence, I want to go to the park with the girl, this is how you would say that I and the girl, if we conditionally in the future, if we were to go to the, so the girl and it should be the park also, the park should be also specific. Oh, it is there, sorry. To the specific park, then I would be happy essentially. Now, look at semantics a little bit. I said that when we put together these conceptualizations by reading parts of the sentence and putting them together, we can do a semantic match essentially. You know, when you say I hit the boy with the girl, then the girl can hardly be an instrument of the hitting act essentially. Likewise, you know, you can do a check of semantic matching to understand sentences. Now, if you were to read a sentence like the boy ate a book and there is only one word of one sense of the word ate, which is ingest, and in the dictionary it will say that you can ingest food essentially. So, you can ingest Y, but Y must be of the type food essentially. What do you do when you read a sentence like the boy ate a book essentially? Some of you might have seen a Charlie Chaplin film called The Gold Rush, in which Charlie Chaplin is eating a shoe. It is a very famous scene. Just look for it on the net somewhere. So, if you can eat a shoe, you can surely eat a book. So, we will represent it like that, but we will mark it by saying that there is something unusual about this. There is a semantic mismatch between the object of that is being eaten, because it is not of type food, but there is no other way we can imagine the sentence, the boy ate a book essentially. There is no other meaning of the word ate. So, coming back to the with, John ate the steak with the odor. So, typically what you would do is you would go down from top to down, and the first one that matches, that is the one that you would select. So, this arrow is pointing wrongly, I will correct it later. It should point to 3 here. PP is an attribute of the PP immediately preceding it. So, the odor is an attribute of the steak, which is shown like this. So, he ate the steak and the steak had the odor. On the other hand, a syntactically similar sentence, John ate the steak with the fork. First we said with the odor, then we had to understand it differently. Now we are saying he ate the steak with the fork. So, our representation, the first one that matches is that it is an object in the instrumental case. So, he ate the steak with the instrumental act of P transing the fork towards his mouth, and the mouth was his mouth, and so on. He shot the girl with the rifle. So, in the verb act dictionary, the dictionary that we are talking about, shoot would be represented as propel bullets from a gun. So, since that is the first one that matches our this thing, we can model this sentence by saying that John propelled bullets and shooting was this instrumental act in which you use a rifle to propel bullets towards the other person. And so, that is the first meaning that would come to the mind of the reasoner here essentially. But that does not always have to be right. He could have been a photographer, in which case the PP would be an attribute of the PP immediately preceding it. So, that it would be the girl with the rifle. So, he shot a picture of the girl with the rifle. Now, clearly simply by looking at this sentence itself, you cannot say which is the right meaning of the sentence, and that is why language of course is harder to deal with, and that is where more world knowledge will come into play. We have mentioned this in the past, that semantic ambiguity has always been a problem for natural language processing. And the famous sentence, time flies like an arrow, we have discussed in the past. Is time an adjective which describes different kinds of flies? So, time flies are a kind of flies, or is time a verb in which your timing flies like you would time an arrow, and so on. The earliest program that processed this produced some 3 or 4 different syntactic passes for the sentence. Now, look at the sentence, I saw the Grand Canyon flying to New York. Now, we would not have any difficulty in making sense of the sentence. We would not even imagine that it was a Grand Canyon which was flying to New York essentially. We would make sense of it by saying that I saw it while I was flying to New York essentially. So, most people are unwilling to accept the flying Grand Canyon, and so we managed to create a right representation. And ELE, which is this program, English language interpreter that I had mentioned, which is doing all this parsing for us, also managed to do this. So, if you look at the word seeing, it has some senses. X trans something from the conscious processor to the immediate memory. So, humans can see it in that sense. Animals can also see things, but in some sense it goes up to their conscious processor, and they do by looking at essentially. Of course, humans can also do it by looking at, but humans can also see things that when you say, for example, that I see, that you understand something essentially. But animals, according to this definition, can see things in the physical sense. And you can see that there is some state, that y is in some state, and you can put it into your conscious processor. That the cat saw the rat, for example, or the cat saw the cheese. So, when you look at this sentence, I saw the Grand Canyon, this part of the sentence, which is the first part. LE parser always work from left to right. I saw the Grand Canyon, and it creates this structure that I entrance the object Grand Canyon by looking at this object Grand Canyon from my eye to my conscious processor. Now flying, so the next word it reads is flying. I saw the Grand Canyon flying to New York. So flying has multiple senses. The first sense is birds and planes and insects can fly. So X can P-trans X by propelling in the air X itself. So you propel yourself into the flare and you can fly. So birds, planes and insects. We can think of them as flying by themselves. Or humans can fly planes. So he flew his plane to New York, if you want to say. Then humans do something as a result of which the plane is propelled in the air towards whatever place you are flying it to. So humans do something as a result of it, the plane propels itself towards something. And the third sense is that humans can fly in planes, that X can P-trans X. So X is a human, and the instrumental act is that the plane is flying. So I flew to Delhi, if I say, it means that I P-trans myself to Delhi by using the instrumental act of the plane flying to Delhi. Implicitly, I am saying that I boarded the plane. So there is only one actor in this sentence. I saw the Grand Canyon flying to New York. As long as you are not willing to accept the fact that the Grand Canyon flew to New York, it has to be you who's flying, and it has to be you who has seen the Grand Canyon, because I saw the Grand Canyon has been understood. And here we have to rely on linguistic cues. So an English language specific rule says that the second conceptualization marks the time of the first one. So we had seen an example earlier. I saw the frog while going home. Again, there was two conceptualizations, and one of them marked the time for the other. Okay, but then you have to rely on language rules to do that. So once you do that, then it's straightforward that I saw the Grand Canyon and so on by looking at the Grand Canyon, which is the instrumental act here. And this happened while I was P-transing myself in the plane in the direction of New York, and the instrumental act for that was that the plane was flying to New York. So I said that LE passes sentences from left to right. So all of us actually do that. We pass sentences from left to right, and that is why we have this thing called garden path sentences, that we start off by looking at a sentence and constructing a representation, and suddenly we have to change our representation. So here's a sentence which we want to look at, which uses the word fill. The word fill has a few different sentences. One is that a human being p-transes some liquid into a container, essentially. So I filled the glass with orange juice, for example. Another sense of the word fill is that somebody is doing it and the glass is getting filled. So it's not that I am doing it, but somebody else is doing it. So let's look at this sentence. Just read this carefully. When you start reading the sentence, and when you say the old man's glasses, the first image that comes to our mind is that of spectacles, essentially. But as we process the sentence further, we see the word filled with cherry, and then we have to revise our representation and go back and use the correct word of the sentence. And the word is the correct sense of the, the sense of the word we want to use is that the, the container or the glasses was possessed by the old man, essentially. And they were filled with cherry, essentially. Somebody filled it, we don't know who filled it. So the last thing we want to look at is syntactic similarity. By this we mean that sentences which seem to have an identical syntactic structure may have very different meanings, essentially. So let's look at two sentences. The first of them is John's love of Mary was harmful. Now we have already seen this notion of love and hate. We said that they are stative in nature, that you are in a state of being in love. In fact, if you remember, this is how we modeled love, that when John thinks of Mary, John is in a state of being in love. So that stands for John's love of Mary. Now the second part of the sentence says was harmful. So the fact that it was harmful is represented by this state that somebody is hurt. Let us assume that is the meaning of the word harmful, essentially. And there is a causal connection between them, that it was the love of John's love of Mary that was harmful to someone. So the fact that John was in love with Mary was harmful for someone is represented by the causal relation between these two conceptualizations. Now let us look at another sentence which is has the same syntactic structure, and the sentence is John's can of beans was edible. So again let us first focus on the first part of that, which is John's can of beans. Now that is modeled totally differently. So John's can of beans is this. These are the beans which are contained in the can, and the can is possessed by John. So that is John's cans of beans. The second part says was edible. So edible, of course, is connected to ingest, but it's more than just the meaning of the word ingest. It also says that you can ingest. So when you say it is edible, it is tied up to the marker can, which means what we have represented here is that one can ingest, and what is it that you are talking about? The beans that are contained in John's can, essentially. So John's can of bean was edible. You can see that these two sentences John's love of Mary was harmful and John's can of beans was edible have identical syntactic structure, but semantically they are totally different essentially. So, that is something which can be handled by the semantics of the words. So, we know that love has a certain conceptual structure associated with it, and we start processing the sentence using that essentially. And whereas, when we talk about can of beans, then it is a more straightforward thing which says that the can which contain the beans and so on. So, you can see that semantic parsing helps in this essentially. So, with this we will end our study of CD theory, and as I said, we will look at the notion of scripts, which are a way of capturing background knowledge about stereotypical situations. So, we will do that next.